Is what we need to tell the world. Number two, it has been fashionable since the Vietnam War to knock the military industrial complex, as if we have, as one activist on behalf of demilitarization said, missile envy, that it was really a Freudian perversion on our part. That's why America liked missiles. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to understand. We Jews of all people should understand. It is the military that liberated Auschwitz. Not words, not negotiations. It will be the military that will stop the terrorists of the world, not negotiations, not understanding. If America is weak militarily, it will hurt Israel. As Moshe Dayan said in 1973, the arms that we receive from America in the morning, we use in the afternoon. I know America has massive domestic needs, but it is the greatest power for good on this planet, and you need force to back up goodness. It is the lesson of the 20th century. Number three, there are three major challenges to morality as the basic value of society in America. We Jews must fight them. Number one, there is a trend in America to understand evil rather than to condemn it. I will give you a micro example. When my son was about 2 years old, a 5-year-old boy in a park, clearly practicing to become a Nazi, walked over to him and just out of nowhere pushed him down, and my son hit his head on the concrete. My son wasn't particularly hurt, and that's not the part of the story that's relevant. What's relevant is the mother's reaction to the boy who pushed my son down. She walked over to him, and she said as follows, "What's bothering you, darling?" I knew one thing about that woman, only one thing. She went to graduate school. The only people in America who would say to a child who pushed down a 2-year-old, "What's bothering you?" had to have gone to graduate school. It is not a normal human reaction. You have to learn such a sick reaction. But my friends, our kids are all going to the places, all these graduate schools where that's what you learn. You learn to ask, why did they do that? Let's try to understand those who burned down innocent black and innocent Korean and innocent other businesses. We try to understand, and it applies in our instance directly. Moorhead Kennedy, a State Department Arabist, man who was, of all places, he was one of those kidnapped in Iran, one of the hostages, wrote an article in the Los Angeles Times a week ago saying we had to understand the rage of Muslims to understand what happened at the World Trade Center. I'm sick of understanding the rage of evil people. I understand the rage of the white Nazis in Germany. They're unemployed. They're lost. They had no background of values in Eastern Germany. I understand Nazis, but it's more important to identify Nazis, not to understand Nazis. We have it backwards. The people who did this thing at the World Trade Center need not be understood. They need to be condemned. That is what needs to be understood. Next, moral equivalence. This was in great popularity during the Cold War. The U.S., the USSR, oh, like two scorpions in a bottle, I heard all the time from various segments of the intellectual community. You can't choose morally. It's one superpower against another superpower. I hear it all the time. I hear Auschwitz and Hiroshima always lumped together as if they are moral equivalents. There is a tragedy with Hiroshima. It is not the same thing morally as Auschwitz. And the Washington Post in 1982 had the very famous line when a PLO terrorist was killed. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Everything is morally equivalent. There are no differences. So too, an expulsion is an expulsion. When Israel expels Hamas, it's the same as when the Nazis expelled Czechs from Lidice, actually killed them. But what's the difference? As in the rhetoric of our time, everything is regarded as morally equal. In this regard, I cannot not use this opportunity, and I debated this tremendously with myself. I have very tough debates with myself. Part of this idea of moral equivalence, a superpower is a superpower, killing is killing, as if context doesn't matter. Context determines all of morality. Every rape is intercourse, but not every intercourse is rape. Context determines whether intercourse is rape. Context determines whether killing is murder or killing is a good thing. There's good killing and there's bad killing. There's good intercourse and there's evil intercourse. So in this regard, I need to say a word with very brief word, because this is not the prime issue in Jewish life, but it is not a non-issue either. Spying is not always spying, any more than killing is always killing, or expulsions are always expulsions. To spy against the United States is disgusting. This country is too beautiful, too trusting, and too good to spy against it. Nevertheless, there are gradations of evil in this world. If Jonathan Pollard were Jonathan O'Brien, I would feel the same way. Ironically, it is not Jonathan Pollard's Jewishness that prompts us to ask mercy for him. It is his Jewishness that prompts some Jews to avoid him. If an American of English ancestry had spied against America for Britain, while Britain was fighting for its life, most Americans would ask for some mercy. Context determines everything. It doesn't justify in this instance, but it does render it rather different than spying for those who wish to destroy America. The third moral calamity that we need to counteract, we Jews, is the new trinity of the university. Christianity has a trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Jews have a trinity, God, Torah, and Israel. And Stanford has a trinity, race, gender, and class. This new trinity is attempting to subvert the first two trinities, and I am scared witless by it. The attempt to reduce human behavior not to values, but to pigmentation, genitalia, and money is the opposite of everything we Jews have tried to teach the world since Sinai. That it is values that first and foremost determine human behavior. Whether you are black or white, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are male or female, there is one set of 10 commandments for all of you. This is being undone, and we must try to undo what is being undone. Because if values are undermined, we have no argument for Israel. Not only do we have no future America, what is the argument? The whole argument is predicated on shared values. When values are undermined and it's all reduced to race, gender, class, we have no mutual rhetoric. My motto, my dear friends, is the one I end nearly all my radio shows with. It's taken from Viktor Frankl, the Jewish psychoanalyst, who went through Auschwitz. He said he concluded one thing after Auschwitz. There are only two races in this world, the decent and the indecent. That is what we have to scream, we Jews, because everything else reduces things to pigmentation, to genitals, and to money. And that is wrong. Everything is reducible only to good and to bad. There are good Jews and bad Jews, good blacks and bad blacks, good Arabs and bad Arabs. If we see everything as Muslim Jewish or as black white or as rich poor or as male female, we subvert what we Jews have worked for 3,200 years since Mount Sinai. Number 6, we must fight the pacifist strain in parts of American life. Jews of all people should know that pacifism is not moral. Pacifism says that it is always wrong to kill. But my dear friends, it is not always wrong to kill. Sometimes it is the holiest act you can engage in. Whoever killed the people who were running Auschwitz, these people did the most saintly deeds. They were more saintly than any Jew studying Torah or any Christian in a monastery. They killed the torturers of innocent men, women, and children. There is no greater mitzvah. Something has happened that we think that to touch armaments is just wrong. Of course we dream for the day when nation shall not lift sword against nation. We dream for it. But so long as the bad do lift swords, the good better have better swords. That there were Jewish communal leaders who opposed America's going to fight against Saddam shows how deep the inroads of non-Jewish pacifist thinking have made in Jewish life. I personally believe that any Jewish official who opposed going to war against Saddam Hussein and still thinks he or she was right should take a leave of absence from active Jewish life. If you cannot see even today the moral need to have crushed Saddam, then when do you believe arms would be right? When? He is an Arab Nazi in every way, shape, and form. Number 7. Number 7 and final. A de-Christianized America is not in our Jewish interest. It is, I will talk about this when I talk about the next thing as I go into Jewish life itself. So I will begin now with part 2, the Jewish soul. Suggestion number 1 for Jewish life. And this is a direct lead-in from the last idea. We Jews have a very long memory. I will never forget a woman called my show once. She said, "You know, isn't it time for you Jews to forgive and forget about the Holocaust? It's 50 years now." I said, "Ma'am, I'll tell you something. You probably don't know this, but every July or August, Jews still fast for an event that took place 2,500 years ago. So why don't you give me a call in about 2,400 years, and maybe we'll consider it." Having said that, and a deep believer that memory is necessary, especially in the age of television and instant non-recall, I will still say memory can paralyze just as it can invigorate. I believe that 2 groups in America are now paralyzed by their memories: Jews and blacks. Jews are paralyzed by memories of Christian anti-Semitism, and blacks are paralyzed by memories of white racism. What neither group has matured enough to recognize is that their erstwhile enemies are now their best friends. Christians in America, ladies and gentlemen, tend to be our best friends. They have changed, my friends, and it is time for us to grow up and acknowledge it. And to blacks, I say the same thing. Whites have changed, my friends, and it is time for you to grow up and acknowledge it too. It is very comforting to sit back and think that you're hated. It makes everything you do so simple then. But if the people who hated you have changed, the Hebrew statement is that where a tzaddik stands,